1, 2, 3, and 4. Count what you have now, don't count what you don't have. Count what you have now, don't count what you don't have.
On New Year's Day of 1987, Phantom Blood was officially published to the Weekly Shonen Jump. The creator, Hirohiko Araki, was a decently known manga writer, but JoJo undeniably became his most popular series. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, JellohLuvr. This is the third video in a 6-part series ranking every part of JoJo from worst to best. Let's get right into it. One of the biggest inspirations to his story was the infamous Fist of the North Star, and as someone who's only recently started watching it, you could definitely tell where some of his inspirations come from. Damsel in distress is a commonly used trope I guarantee you've seen before, where the antagonist captures the protagonist's love interest. You see this in Mario, Sword Art Online, The Princess Bride, and of course, Fist of the North Star. The main antagonist is Shin, who captures Yuria, the main character Ken's fiancée, hoping she would fall in love with him and help him rule over his district, the Southern Cross. Now this is one of the biggest differences between the two, because in Phantom Blood, my true self King Dio ain't no fucking simp. He looks out for himself and could care less about some bitch. That is until he figures out Jonathan's been getting a little busy with this void arena, so he steals her first kiss and throws her into the mud. Fucking based. One of my favorite aspects of Phantom Blood is the distance Araki creates between the protagonist and the antagonist. Jonathan and Dio fight a lot. Every time Dio wins, he does something to make sure he crushes Jonathan's morale. Some examples are when Dio kicks his dog, puts belt to ass in boxing and then spreads rumors about him, and as previously mentioned, when he turns Arena into his leftovers. In comparison, whenever Jonathan beats Dio, it's more of a draw or he does something later to even the score. At the end of episode 1, Jonathan's able to land a few good punches, and the fight stops before Dio's able to retaliate. So later, he incinerates Jonathan's dog Danny alive. Holy fucking shit. This happens again in episode 3, where Jonathan confronts Dio about poisoning his father George. Dio is trapped in a corner, and after his previous experiment with the stone mask, he realizes the only way out is to use it on himself, but he needs blood to do so. He tries stabbing Jonathan, but his dad protects him, killing him in the process, before burning his house with his dad's dead body in it to the ground. A scene that very well could have been the end for Dio turned into another loss for our cuck Jonathan. Now let's take another step back and look at what each character's lost, starting with Dio. Maybe some pride, his ego is pretty much his entire personality. And Jonathan lost his dog, his girl, his house, his dad. Yeah, there's a gap between the two for sure. In episode 4, Jonathan meets a personal favorite character of mine, Will Antonio Zeppili. Now my boy Will has a fucking rocking stash. The creator Araki was actually very hesitant to add this major detail, as in more traditional tropes, especially in shonen, a character with a mustache was a symbol that they were untrustworthy. Think Dr. Eggman, Wario. For my mainstream lovers, there's even Sergeant Gross from Attack on Titan. Now why is this important for the story? I believe a lot of characters, including my boy Will, show Araki's genius spin on a lot more traditional tropes. As previously mentioned, damsel in distress is a very important aspect of the story that inspired him, yet he chose to go in another direction. Araki's spin on this is intriguing, as his main goal was to make Dio a lot more hateable, as villains are sometimes hard to make memorable as it's difficult for the viewer to relate to them. A big reason Dio's such an iconic villain is because he's given background and treated almost as a main character. In a lot more traditional shonen, this usually doesn't happen, to let the main character shine more, as typically they have more screen time, so it only makes more sense they're the more interesting character. As a viewer, you hate Dio, but you don't exactly dislike him. He's actually one of the more charismatic characters that brings life into the story. Having your villain be more pretentious than the protagonist is a very risky move, but Araki executes it perfectly. Now, a lot of people like to call Phantom Blood generic, which it is, but is that because of the content or the seasons following you're comparing it to? There's no doubt part 1 is the tamest in the entire series. You'd be an idiot to think otherwise, yet I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Earlier, I purposely mentioned The Princess Bride, one of my favorite movies. The entire thing is very predictable, but the story is more about the journey than the destination. A lot of side characters are given an exceptional amount of depth, like Inigo Montoya. He dedicates his life to the art of fencing to find the six-fingered man that killed his father. It's a side story that's easy to follow, and you can't help but root for him when he finally confronts the killer. Now in contrast, some of the more minor antagonists in Fist of the North Star is mainly to set the post-apocalyptic setting and to show Ken's journey to get back at Shin. Phantom Blood differs from both, a weak point of the show sometimes even being the mindless, usually depthless creatures Jonathan has to fight in order to get to Dio. Araki purposefully did this to make Dio stand out more, and again to push that narrative that anytime Jonathan has any sort of challenge that he overcomes, it means nothing to him, and it really just gets in the way of Jonathan's goal. Bruford comes to mind as one of the characters Jonathan fights against that's pretty forgettable. There's some backstory, but like other minor antagonists, it's left intentionally mediocre, so when Dio shows up again, his scenes have more volume. Quickly, I wanted to mention that the voice acting, especially in the dub, is fucking perfect. I love how they make it like almost Shakespearean and they change some lines from the original manga, and it's awesome. Now finally, let's talk about pacing. One of the most important things that determine how good a show is, to me, is the pacing. Now the ending I get is purposefully kind of mediocre because they wanted to continue the series, very similarly to Fist of the North Star, where they did something that would intentionally make the series continue rather than capping off almost a perfect storytell ending. I don't hate it, it's just kind of annoying, especially when you're trying to rank the individual seasons, so I'm not going to hold that against it in the final score. Again, to restate, Phantom Blood is only 10 episodes long, but the pacing is near perfect. It's fast, especially near the beginning, to hook people in, and then around episode 4 it slows down. Some people aren't fond of this, but I disagree, because when you compare it to the bigger, more important parts, the contrast is amazing. It makes the build up to the final fight a lot more natural, which, if you remember, was something I didn't feel the same way about Part 5. I've pretty much gone over everything, let's get into the rankings. Phantom Blood was an unsurprising success. It took one story and twisted things just enough to where it felt original, and you cannot forget about how perfect of a villain Dio is. The soundtrack as well was something I didn't mention because it's just so perfect it blends in with everything, but let's lock in. Part 1 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, Phantom Blood, gets the official stamped JellohLuvr score of, drumroll please, 8.5 out of 10. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you think about Phantom Blood and if this style of video is something you enjoy, as I know it was slightly more comparative and informative than usual. Again, thank you for making it all the way to the end. That's all I got for you guys, and as always, take care.
Messages from the stars when you're making love to me.